So we've talked a bit about these presets or cues. We've talked about these sliders here, which are the main, the four main speakers, the two that are pointing at the balcony. We've talked about this A, B, C, D, which are layers. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Remind me what a layer is.
So a layer is just different. So instead of having one board where you have all of the channels in one big line, they stack them on top of each other.
So layer B takes you to channels 25 through 32. Mm-hmm. Layer C
is the mix masters and FX.
Is the mix masters, so the total volume up and down for all the mixes. And what's D?
D is, we don't worry about that.
Don't worry about D. Okay. Yeah. Put them back on A, which is the way it'll normally be. We've talked about the green buttons, which are the select. That tells which microphones or sources are turned on. Some of them have to be on all the time, whether the volume's turned up or not.
Correct.
What's below the green buttons?
So below the green buttons, that's your select. So a select button...
Do one closer in the middle so I can...
Yep. So select is a radio button, meaning that you can only have one selected at any given time, correct? So when you
what happens when you select it? What can you do now that you couldn't do before?
So now that we have, this is just balcony piano, but we have select. So this up here is the equalizer, the gate, the compressor, all that fun stuff specific for that channel. So these are the specific settings for the balcony piano. So if I change it to Paul, for instance, you can see up here that the EQ, everything changes, and we go back.
Okay. Yep. So, in other words, instead of having that many buttons for every slider, you just get that many buttons, and then you select which slider or which channel it's controlling.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And along with selecting, you can go up here to the touchscreen menu. You hit inputs and VCA. So you can, that's where you can set up. So you see input 11 setup. So you can change the name, the type, and then patching if you
want. But really, that's not something most people would have to do. We can cover that more detailed stuff in a different video.
Yep.
But for the most part, average person wouldn't need to use select.
Correct.
Okay, because they wouldn't be adjusting anything. When would you, who knows what you're doing, when would you in the middle service use a select?
I would use a select, so if there's a little bit of feedback, so if there's a soloist up front or in the balcony even, and we have them turned up, but there's a little bit of feedback, I can go up here and I can find out what the frequency is of the feedback, and I can turn it down here. I can change the compression settings, so that's so once the signal level gets above threshold here, it starts to attenuate the signal.
So in other words, it gives it less and less impact.
It adds a ceiling to it. Yep. Okay. Gate is the opposite of it. It adds a floor. So once the signal drops below a threshold, it'll turn off the signal. So you can see if we have Paul here, you can see that gate is on here, and because there's no signal going through, it's obviously below the threshold because there's nothing coming through, and you can see this red X, meaning that the gate is closed.
So suppose you had a soloist who was singing very softly. Mm-hmm. You'd select the channel for the soloist, and what would you adjust? I mean, you could just raise the value.
Yeah, what you should do if you're here and you don't really know what you're doing, just turn up the volume, and the EQ should be set for, I know solo 2 is set, so even if you crank it all the way up, you shouldn't get feedback.
Okay.
But the keyword is shouldn't. So you shouldn't go above 0. I won't go above 5. I won't go above 5. Show me the
numbers.
So this is 0. This is +5. This is -5. I would not go above 5 unless you're really standing here watching it.
Because you might get feedback.
Because you might get feedback and you might need to pull it back. So
you got a soloist, and turn the select off. We're not using that right now. So you got a soloist, and they're really soft. You want to turn them up, you just turn them up.
Yep.
But don't go above 5, plus 5.
Don't go above +5 unless you're sitting here and with your finger on the fader.
In case you get feedback.
So
above 5, you're very likely to get feedback.
Yeah, if it's not set up right. So like
So suppose this microphone is always too soft. Everybody's too soft when they use the solo microphone upstairs. You could select that channel. Okay, now that means all of these refer to that.
Yep.
And what would you adjust to turn it up?
You would adjust your gain here, so that is how much the signal is amplified once it gets into the board.
But you normally shouldn't have to adjust gain for a
Right.
normal church service.
Unless you absolutely, positively, 100% know what you're doing, do not touch these knobs. All your
No.
yeah, all you need to do for a show is your entire thing is right here. Everything you need to do is right here, unless you absolutely know what you're doing. There.
So even though the solo is just so light and you're already up to +5, just mention to somebody that we may need to increase the gain on that channel.
Yep, and
But just leave it be for the church service.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And you can push it all the way up if you're watching it.
Okay. Go ahead and turn off the select for that. Now, what buttons are below the select? You've got the on, so the channel is turned on.
Yep.
The select, which we're not going to be using. What's the solo button?
So solo is, right now none of the solo buttons are lit up. So that means everything that comes, so this is your headset, your monitor headset.
Okay.
And here is the knob that controls monitor level. So you can turn it up and down.
So the monitor level is in your headset, or is
It's
that
just
monitors down,
that's
all the other monitors?
that's
like
your
downstairs and
that's
up
your
there?
headset.
Just the headset.
Just the
So
headset.
that one right there is the headset level.
Yep. So you can't really. There's no LEDs right here, but if I go to a mix, you can see that there's no solo. If you want to listen to what's going into the video, because there's no solo selected, you see here the blue LED next to monitor level is that. So the letters next to that is AFL. So that's after fader level. So that's that's what's coming out after this mains here, right?
So if you lower the main, it's going to lower your headset.
Yeah, because it's after this. Yep.
Okay.
But what you can do is you can select a specific, you can solo a specific channel, and you can see here that switches now to the yellow LED, which is PFL or pre-fader level. So that is what's coming into this channel before it gets to this fader. So you're getting the full volume from this fader, even if you or from this channel. So even if you have this all the way down, because you have it soloed and it's pre-fade, you're getting the signal. You're listening to whatever's coming through before it hits that.
So if you turn a fader down and it doesn't turn them down, turn off the solo.
Yep. And what you can do, a quick, easy way, you see here this red button here. It says solo clear, CLR. What you can do is you can hit that, and it turns it off.
So again, the primary use is going to be to know that if you turn a fader down and the person's mic or source doesn't go down, pastor forgot to turn off his microphone and he's in the bathroom. Right?
Yeah.
You turn the fader down, but it doesn't go down.
Yep. And
clear the solos. What's that again?
it would be this button right here. So if I solo a channel,
Oh, then it'll light up.
then it lights up. And you can hit it and clear it.
And okay.
Yep. And it turns on when you're in a mix, when you first go to a mix, because you're soloing. Technically, if you go back to the show, see how it's off. Technically, what you're doing when you go to the mix is you're hitting this solo button here, but you're not really, because you're listening to this thing. It's just the way the thing works.
I didn't get that, but we'll just skip that part.
Yeah.
Okay, good.